The gateposts were practically crumbling down. When they walked through it, they spotted some haggard court ladies dressed in mud-colored rukun, washing clothes in wash bowls. The women all looked sickly, and some of them were up in their years as well. When Jusetsu walked past them, they didn't even look up. Juju nestled in close to Jusetsu's arm and looked around fearfully. They referred to this place as the court lady's grave. They stepped into a building topped with mossy roof tiles. It smelled musty inside, and it was no wonder, considering the walls were covered in mold stains. The eunuch in charge of the place led them toward a room at the back. "This is so Kogyo's room," he said, "but you're wasting your time if you're expecting her to answer your questions." "Why's that?" "When you see her, you'll find out." The eunuch bid them goodbye and walked away. The room had no door, but was instead shielded by a slightly stained curtain. While Ankei stood in front of it on guard, Jusetsu ventured inside. In the small room that awaited her, she found a simple bed by a window with a woman lying in it. The eunuch had warned them that she'd been laid up with a fever for a day. The cleansing quarters also housed many court ladies who were no longer able to work due to illness. Her wrinkles were so deep that at first glance, Jusetsu mistook her for an elderly woman. But upon closer inspection, she didn't seem that old at all. "Are you so Kogyo?" she asked, leaning over the bed. The woman opened her eyes slightly and looked up at her. She let her gaze wander, but no response came. When Jusetsu went to repeat her question, the woman opened her mouth. Jusetsu backed off in surprise. There was no tongue inside the woman's mouth. The woman followed Jusetsu with her eyes and made a slight noise, but no words came. Jusetsu figured that she was probably trying to say something along the lines of, yes. Now it was clear why the eunuch told her that they would be wasting their time. There was no way she could answer anything they asked. Jusetsu had heard that on rare occasions, court ladies had their tongues cut off as a form of punishment. But she didn't really think that happened. It was a terrible thing to do to someone. "I'll have to stick to yes or no questions that she can answer by moving her head," Jusetsu thought. "I am the Raven Consort. I live in the Yame Palace. I came here because I have some things to ask you." Jusetsu took the earring in question out from underneath her belt. "Would you happen to recognize?" She had planned on adding this earring to the end of her sentence, but before she had the chance, Kogyo's expression visibly changed. The woman opened her eyes wide, and a mix of fear and surprise appeared on her face. She kept trying to say something, but all that came from her mouth was drool and groaning noises. "Did this belong to Hanojo?" Kogyo nodded over and over again in confirmation. Then, she began incessantly moving her mouth and repeatedly made gestures as if she was writing something with her hand. "Would you like to write something down?" Jusetsu asked, and Kogyo gave her a forceful nod. Jusetsu looked back at Juju. "Get that eunuch to lend us a writing brush and paper." Juju went outside but returned a few moments later, looking defeated. "He said they don't keep things like that here. And she doesn't know how to write, so she wouldn't be able to communicate that way anyway." Jusetsu looked at Kogyo. She shook her head and stared right back at her. The look in Kogyo's eyes was fierce, a far cry from the lifeless shell of a woman she appeared to be when they first saw her lying in bed. "In that case, let us take her to the Yame Palace. Ankei, carry her for me." He wrapped Kogyo in a thin quilt and lifted her up. As they were about to take her outside, the guard eunuch caught up with them, flustered. "Hey, you can't just take her away with you." "I'm the Raven Consort," Jusetsu said. "I am within my rights to take this woman away. If anybody complains, tell them to come to the Yame Palace." Upon hearing the name Raven Consort, the eunuch retreated, taken aback. She was the Raven Consort, rumored to specialize in curses of all kinds, including cursing people to death. Not even the eunuchs who lit the lanterns dared to get close to the Yame Palace. Once they had taken Kogyo out of the cleansing quarters, Jusetsu and the others hurried back home. As there were no court ladies stationed at the Yame Palace, there were several empty rooms. They put Kogyo to bed in one of them, and Jusetsu fetched her some hemp paper and a writing brush. Juju ground some ink in the inkstone, then placed it on Kogyo's bedside table. Kogyo sat up and took the brush in hand. "I got one of the court ladies in the cleansing palace to teach me letters," she began to write, in shoddy handwriting. "I'm sure they would kill me if they found out I knew how to write, so I pretended I couldn't." Jusetsu frowned when she saw the words. They would kill me. Kogyo kept on writing. They killed the servant girl, but it would attract too much attention if they killed a lady in waiting. Instead, they cut off my tongue so I wouldn't be able to speak. The servant girl she was talking about must have been the maid. The registry said she passed away due to illness, but now, it sounded like it was more likely murder. They made me work as another consort's lady-in-waiting, made up a crime, and cut off my tongue as a punishment. Her overwhelming desire to write may have gotten the better of her, as her letters were all jumbled up. She bit her lip, looking frustrated. Who would do such a thing? Who was it that wanted to kill you? Kogyo's hand trembled. She took in a deep breath, then carefully wrote out her next letters. The Empress Dowager. Kogyo went on to explain that the Empress Dowager had poisoned the Magpie Consort. The Magpie Consort was the Emperor's third-ranking consort. She was the daughter of the chief vassal and was young. She was said to be pregnant when she was murdered. And that was the incident that Han-Oho was accused of. The Magpie Consort was pregnant. Her father, the chief vassal, wasn't on the Empress Dowager's side, so they put the blame on poor Han-Ojo. They bribed the servant girl to put the wolf's bane in her cupboard. I saw her doing it. But that was where Kogyo stopped writing. She drifted the tip of her brush through the air a few times again and again, but then bit hard on her lip and put it down. I ended up obeying the eunuch's orders too. He told me he would kill my family at home, so I left Han-Ojo to die. Kogyo shuddered, then paused her writing. I learned to write in the hope that one day I would at the very least be able to let people know the truth. I take it that you are on Han-Ojo's side if you have her earring. What? Kogyo looked up. Am I wrong? She wrote. Jusetsu didn't know why Kogyo assumed she was an ally of Han-Ojo's, but then explained that Koshun had picked up the earring in the inner palace, and that it was haunted by her ghost. When Kogyo heard the word ghost, she turned pale. Han-Ojo's ghost? She wrote. If this earring did belong to her, then it must be, Jusetsu replied, showing her the earring that was sitting in her palm. The earring is definitely hers. I remember it well. It sticks in my memory because she only had the one, you see. Only one? Yes, she only had one, but Nyang Yang always insisted on wearing it anyway. The Nyang Yang she was referring to must have been Han-Ojo. Kogyo stared off into space. She seemed to be thinking back on something. She told me about it once. She said that she gave one of the earrings to her fiancé in her hometown. Fiancé? Nyang Yang was engaged to someone since she was a child, but her father was an official here and forced her into the inner palace. Before she came, she gave one of her earrings to him. Whenever she touched it, she thought of him. She continued writing. Nyang Yang wasn't a cheerful person, but she was kind. My family owned a small noodle shop, but I was picked to work here as a court lady. Most of the other court ladies come from surprisingly respectable backgrounds, and I struggled as I couldn't read or write very well and had no education. Nyang Yang couldn't allow herself to stand by and watch, so she took me in as her lady-in-waiting. And yet, Kogyo stopped momentarily. Quickly after, though, she seemed to pull herself together again and went on. One day, Nyang Yang ended up giving that earring to someone. Really? When she came back from the courtyard, she wasn't wearing it anymore. I was surprised and thought she dropped it, so I asked her where it went. Instead, she smiled and told me she gave it away to someone. Someone who was crying, apparently. Maybe they were upset about something that happened in the inner palace. I'm sure they knew what a kind person Nyang Yang was. Nyang Yang would never even dream of poisoning anyone. So that's why I wondered whether you were the person she gave the earring to, or someone else who knew them. If so, you would have known that she was innocent. Kogyo put down the writing brush and exhaled. Jusetsu placed a hand on her forehead. It was hot. The woman's temperature might have gone up from exertion. All right, you should rest for a while, Jusetsu said, but Kogyo had other ideas. She picked up the brush again and quickly wrote something down. Nyang Yang wasn't just framed for something she didn't do. She was murdered. The eunuchs murdered her. Please find a way to punish them. I will accept my punishment too. That was all Kogyo managed to write before she passed out. Jusetsu let her lay down and used the leftover hemp paper to write down the names of 3 items: thorough wax, gold thread, and crow dipper, and gave the paper to Anke. Tell the medicinal department to prepare these treatments for me, she said. Anke left the room immediately with the paper in hand. Jusetsu left Juju to look after Kogyo and went back to her own room. She placed the earring on the table and stared at it. She was killed for a crime she didn't commit. That must have been why Han Ojo ended up as a ghost and was haunting the earring. Who did she give it to? That person probably dropped it. Since it was found in the inner palace, that meant they must have still been working there. Could it have been a long-serving court lady? Or maybe a eunuch who had been around since the previous emperor's time? Jusetsu pressed her temples. What was going on? At any rate, she needed to tell Koshun what she'd found out. She ran her finger across the jade. If they could get revenge for Han Ojo, would it satisfy her enough to save her soul? On the other hand, if they left her injustice unavenged, not even a repose of the soul ritual would do the trick. Jusetsu picked up the earring and dangled it in front of her eyes. Jusetsu used the ingredients Onke fetched for her to boil up a concoction and gave it to Kogyo to drink. The next day, the woman's temperature had gone down. When she fed her gruel containing ginseng and licorice to strengthen her body, her sickly complexion improved considerably. They spent the whole day taking care of the ailing woman, and before they knew it, the sun had already set. Before long, Koshun turned up at the palace, as Jusetsu had sent a message to request his presence. Do you know the name of the eunuch who took away your tongue and killed Han Ojo? When they explained to Koshun the series of events, Koshun didn't look particularly surprised. He simply asked Kogyo this question. Kogyo nodded and then wrote his name on a piece of paper. Koshun glanced at it before giving the paper to Ace. That man isn't anybody important, but he is the Empress Dowager's lapdog, he remarked. He works in the palace registry now. I'm glad we chose not to dispose of him back then, he added in a murmur so quiet that only those next to him, Ace and Jusetsu, could hear it. Do you know the name of Han Ojo's fiancé? Koshun also asked. Yang always called him Juro, Kogyo immediately wrote. Then she looked as if she was pausing for thought for a moment. The name Juro referred to a person's seniority within their family. It was always used to refer to the 10th man born in a particular generation. Something seemed to come to mind a brief time later, and she hurriedly scribbled down a few more letters. Kakuko, she wrote. That was his name. Kakuko. Koshun whispered curiously. Do you know him? Ace asked. Koshun put his hand to his chin, trying to remember. I feel like I've heard that name before. I'm sure it was Mayin who mentioned it. Mayin was the scholar who acted as the emperor's advisor. He excelled in the imperial exam, passing with the highest grade. He's now working in the imperial library as a bookkeeper. He has a good memory, Jusetsu observed. Koshun crossed his arms and became lost in thought. If her family were reputable enough to get their daughter a position as an inner palace concubine, her fiancé must have come from a suitably good background. It's no surprise that he would be an official. Still, how did Han Ojo's fiancé feel about what had happened to her? She was snatched away from her fiancé by the inner palace, or that is to say the emperor, and subsequently died there. Jusetsu pressed her hand against her belt. She had stowed the earring away somewhere underneath it again. Could I meet him? Jusetsu asked Koshun, looking up at him. Could you meet him? He asked back. As a rule, the consorts in the inner palace were not permitted to meet with people from the outside unless they were related. It sounds like Han Ojo remembered her fiancé fondly, even after coming to the inner palace. I want to ask him what kind of relationship they had. If Han Ojo loved him that deeply, perhaps it was him that kept her anchored to this world. If he were in their hometown, it would be harder to meet with him, as Jusetsu would not be able to leave the imperial estate. But since he was a palace official, it had to be possible. Koshun just needed to help facilitate it. Koshun appeared to give it some thought, but soon replied, Okay, let's arrange for you to meet. Jusetsu gazed at Koshun's face for a moment. Despite it being his request in the first place, the emperor had gone far out of his way to visit a single court lady to listen to her story, and he was now readily complying with Jusetsu's wishes. Why in the world is that jade earring so important to him? Jusetsu wondered to herself. I posed this question to you since the offset, but why are you putting so much effort into this? As insensitive as this may sound, it is nothing more than an earring you found on the ground. This was not normal behavior for an emperor. Koshun glanced at Jusetsu and rose from his seat without saying a word. Annoyed that he ignored her question, Jusetsu followed him as he left the room. Once they were out of the palace, Koshun stopped in his tracks. He didn't even bother to turn around and face her as he spoke. "I think I made it clear when I first came to see you," he began quietly. Jusetsu stood beside him, looking up at his face. "I just want to know who dropped that earring. I told you that I couldn't. I thought that if we found out who was haunting it, I'd be able to do some investigating. So you made me do the investigating instead? Thanks to you, we found out that the earring belonged to Han Ojo. I appreciate that, but that doesn't help us find out who dropped it now. The person who lost the earring had to be the person who Han Ojo gifted it to. They were either a eunuch or court lady from the previous emperor's era, but there were too many of those to count." "You still haven't told me why you want to know that in the first place," Jusetsu argued. Koshun may have seemed like he was giving a proper answer, but he was evading the real question. He had been doing that since the very start. As earnest as he seemed, the emperor wasn't a trustworthy man. Koshun looked down at Jusetsu from the corner of his eye, then bent over slightly. His face got closer to hers and she almost backed away, but what happened next made her stay still. In an even quieter voice, he said, "I think it would just cause further trouble for you if you asked me that. He must not have wanted anyone to hear the truth. You've already caused me more than enough trouble. I doubt any more would make any difference. It wasn't me that picked up that earring." Jusetsu gazed up at the emperor. "Then who did?" "My spy in the inner palace." "Spy?" Jusetsu echoed. "The person who dropped it may have witnessed a certain plot being carried out, and if so, they could be of great help to me." "Master," Eisei called out, "you don't need to go into too much detail." Koshun cast a brief glance toward him to make him be quiet. "A plot? So the person who dropped the earring was a witness." Jusetsu scowled. "I see. That is why you were putting so much effort into this. Not for the ghost. It was all a lie, even what he said about feeling sorry for her." The look on Koshun's face remained unchanged. He simply said, "I'm just answering your question." And with that, he began to walk away. Jusetsu stayed in her place and gave him a fierce glare as he went off into the distance. But then, a memory of something Koshun said came flowing back to her. "Won't you save her for me?" She released the tension from her furrowed brow. If he only wanted to track down the person who dropped it, there would have been no need for him to make that demand. But when Jusetsu came to this realization, she was confused. What was that all about? She was certain that Koshun was still not telling her the truth. Jusetsu was silently watching Koshun disappear out of sight, but she suddenly stepped forward. "Wait!" she called out to the emperor, who was heading toward the passageway. When he turned around, she added, "I still have something I want to say to you," and drew closer still. "If it's something to do with the earring, then I'm not." "It's not," Jusetsu interrupted him. There was one thing she needed to ask. She couldn't just leave it be. Koshun stared at Jusetsu for a moment, then gave Eisei a signal. Eisei gave him a hesitant look, but bowed and went away regardless. Koshun turned to walk toward the pond. There was no breeze that night, and the moon's reflection floated on the black surface of the water. "Why did you turn a blind eye to what you saw?" "I don't understand your intentions," Jusetsu asked, looking up at Koshun at the side of the pond. She couldn't even begin to comprehend why he would pretend not to know her true identity. What could possibly be going through his mind? That thought constantly raced around her head. Koshun looked down at her, then began to speak. "I wouldn't gain anything from exposing the truth." His voice was quiet, emotionless, and as subdued as a beam of sunlight in the winter. You couldn't infer any emotion from it, and his facial expression was just the same. On the contrary, it would cause more problems than good. "If I were to execute you, I would no longer have a raven consort, and my people would condemn me for being so cruel. My grandfather took things too far," he said, staring at the water's surface. As soon as he became emperor, he turned into a terrifying person. The older he got, the more paranoid he became, and he convinced himself that everyone around him was trying to steal his throne from him. It even drove him to kill his own sons. The Flame Emperor had indeed had his 2 sons executed for treason. "There's no need for me to have you killed. If you wanted to kill me, though, that'd be a different story." Koshun looked at Jusetsu. "I have no desire to do so," she replied. Koshun examined her expression, trying to work out if she was lying. "Do you not hate me? Or my grandfather? Or my father?" Jusetsu avoided meeting his gaze. Moonlight shone on the water, its cold surface glistening. "I don't know. I've never experienced hatred toward another person. If I were to hate anyone, it would be myself." Koshun raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because I left my mother to die. When my mother was caught, I was sitting down on the ground, trying to hold my breath, so they wouldn't find me, so that I alone would be spared." "I left my mother to die," she whispered, looking at the reflection of the moon on the water. This feeling had been tormenting and tearing up Jusetsu's heart for all this time. All she did that day was cover her ears and tremble. She stupidly thought that if she just waited for the situation to pass, everything would go back to the way it once was. It was so foolish of her. When she saw her mother's head, her heart shattered with regret. Why had she sat by and let that happen? Why couldn't she have worked up the courage to dash out and do something? Her sorrow chipped away at the recesses of her heart, and there was nothing that could seal the wounds that it had made. "If you wouldn't kill me because it wouldn't benefit you, that must mean that you might in the future, if it ever did," Jusetsu said casually, turning on her heel. Despite saying it, this didn't particularly bother her. Jusetsu. That was the first time the Emperor had called her by her name. The sound of it was strangely soft and quiet as it beat against Jusetsu's chest. When she turned around, he had taken something off his belt and was holding it out for her. "What's that?" she asked with a frown, not understanding what he was trying to do. Koshun took one of Jusetsu's hands and placed the decoration into it. It was a small fish-shaped ornament made of amber. "I am giving you this as a symbol of my promise." "Take it." "What promise?" "My promise that I will not kill you." Jusetsu looked at Koshun and the amber fish in turn. His eyes were the darkest shade of black and were as clear as running spring water. For some reason, she didn't feel like she could look right into them for any longer. She averted her gaze. "You can keep it," she said. "I wouldn't like anyone to think I stole it from you." Jusetsu stuck out the hand that the amber fish was resting on. Koshun wouldn't take it and just turned away. "Wait!" He glanced back at Jusetsu, who was trying to chase after him. "Jusetsu, the same thing happened to me," he said. "Pardon? I left my mother to die too." His words were void of emotion, and his deep black eyes almost seemed to absorb the darkness that surrounded him. They looked empty. This man's heart is missing something too, and nothing will fill the gaps, Jusetsu sensed. The moonlight shone down on him as he walked and disappeared into the distance. Even the amber fish that sat in Jusetsu's palm was gently illuminated by its pure white light. Koshun was 10 when his mother died. His mother was often plagued by melancholy in those days, but Koshun still paid her regular visits. These bouts of depression were caused by the harassment she received from the Empress Dowager, who, at that time, was still the Empress. Even when Koshun was named as the Crown Prince, his mother remained a consort. The support she received was weak, and that was the very reason her son ended up becoming the Crown Prince. The Empress's own heir had died in infancy, so Koshun, who had no powerful family members on his mother's side to butt in, was the perfect candidate. The Emperor was timid and hated fighting, so he avoided rocking the boat at all costs. He feared the Empress and her relatives so much that he did nothing to protect the Crown Prince's mother, and left her to fend for herself. He simply thought that if he stayed out of it, the Empress would eventually get bored. He was the type of man who had no grasp whatsoever of the suffering of others. The Empress, on the other hand, was more than familiar with suffering, and to everyone else's detriment. She knew exactly how to cause others pain. Koshun's mother despised fighting just as much as the Emperor did, and perhaps that was why they hit it off. Nobody would ever know. She tried as hard as she could not to hurt any of those around her. Even when her own father, a low-ranking official, was ridiculed in front of everyone, or she herself was forced to dance, something she despised, and was made into a laughingstock. She endured it. Never putting up a fight, she put up with whatever they threw her way. From Koshun's perspective, she looked pathetic, but he was a child then. He didn't have a clue. "Stop coming here so often," she told him. I'm sure you have a lot to do over in your palace." These words made Koshin feel like she was deserting him. Why was he being treated like a nuisance when he was so worried about his mother's well-being? He had learned a lot, but on the inside, he was still immature. "Fine," Koshin said, as he furiously rose from his seat. "You won't be seeing me again." He then headed back to his palace to the east, the one that the crown prince called home. Why did I say such a thing? That had been the last time he saw his mother alive. After his mother's funeral, Koshin paid his mother's empty palace a visit one more time. His mother was obviously nowhere to be seen, not in her room, not in her bed. Koshin sat aimlessly in a chair and stared at the garden that was visible through the doorway. "Your mother didn't rebel against the Empress because she was afraid that harm would come to you, young one," Grandmaster En told him. Apparently, that was why she discouraged him from visiting so frequently, too. Hearing this made Koshin want to visit her again. But before he had another chance to, she passed away. Whenever he thought back on his final words to her, he felt the sharp pain like a blade piercing his chest and him falling down. This phantom blade left a gaping hole where it had once been. He was empty on the inside. Before the peonies in the garden, Koshin cried whenever he thought about his mother dying alone, unable to ask the emperor for help, and with her own son, of all people, spewing harsh words toward her. He didn't know how to make up for it. There was nothing he could do. She was dead now. At that moment, a shadow appeared from somewhere behind him. "Who are you? What's wrong? Are you crying?" asked a small voice. Koshin could still clearly remember the girl who approached him. "Master?" Having just awoken from his slumber, Koshin looked over at Issei. He placed a hand on his forehead and rose from his lounge chair. Issei brewed a fragrant pot of tea for him, and the first sip made Koshin's mind feel that much clearer. With his official business for the morning done, he had laid down in his room in the inner court. His workload had increased lately, and so he was often awake until late at night. His body was suffering because of it. However, things were reaching a pivotal point. There was no way he was going to mess things up now. He watched the rising steam and engaged in silent contemplation. To avoid disturbing his master, Issei focused on quietly serving bowls of jujube dates simmered in honey. He added some lychees as well, and passed a bowl to Koshin. The emperor brought one to his mouth as his thoughts wandered. The lychees were fresh and tantalizingly sweet. He could feel his exhaustion lifting away. "Master, there's a message for you from the Yame Palace." Issei took the note that a helper eunuch had brought and passed it to Koshin. When he opened it, he found a piece of water-patterned paper with elegant writing scrawled across it. It must have been Jusetsu's handwriting. Once the emperor read through it, a faint smile appeared on his face. "What is it?" Issei asked. "Oh, nothing." Koshin closed the letter and put it in his breast pocket. Then he gestured Issei over to his side. "Has Kakuko been called to the Koto Institute?" "Yes," Issei replied. The Koto Institute was where the palace's best scholars were sent to compile and collate books. As the most impressive candidate in the imperial exam, Kakuko had been summoned to interpret a certain classical manuscript, but this was only a guise. Fetch 2 eunuch uniforms and send them to the Yame Palace. In the letter, Jusetsu had demanded to see Kakuko as soon as possible. In fact, it was quite an arrogant-sounding letter. Fine. Issei agreed reluctantly. There was no way they could take Jusetsu to the Koto Institute in her raven consort garb, as it was located outside the inner palace. As surprising as it was, consorts were able to go out as long as they had permission. But it would be a hassle and would attract too much attention if she were to leave just to speak to a mere palace official. Wearing men's clothes was quite fashionable these days, and even some of those in the inner palace wore robes that were made for men. Despite this, if Jusetsu simply dressed in masculine clothing, she would still look like a woman. However, the emperor felt there was a small chance that she could get away with disguising herself as a boy eunuch whenever that consort's involved. Issei mumbled softly, "You don't act like yourself, master." Koshin hated breaking the rules, but now he was overlooking the fact that Jusetsu was a surviving member of the last dynasty and was taking her out of the inner palace, dressed as a eunuch. "Sometimes these things are necessary," Koshin replied. Issei seemed far from convinced. Despite being the one to say it, Koshin didn't really understand either. He just wanted to see what that girl was going to do. He hadn't felt this way for a long time, not since losing his mother and his friend. Koshun got up and took a small case out of a cabinet. He lifted the lid and tucked its contents into his breast pocket. Reluctantly, Issei sent for a maid and instructed her to fetch some eunuch uniforms. "They're all men," said Jusetsu. She was looking around the place, overcome by curiosity. Issei looked at her. His eyes seemingly said, "Well, obviously." Koshun said nothing. They were walking the corridors of the Koto Institute. Scholars were coming and going. Their host was a scholar known as Mayin, whose real name was Kajun. The man looked intelligent and was at least in his 40s. Upon seeing Jusetsu and Juju dressed as eunuchs, he simply glanced toward Koshun, his face remaining unchanged. "This way," Mayin said, guiding the group toward one particular room. Their destination was the book storage room. The shelves by the wall were crammed full of bamboo slips and scrolls, and the stench of old ink filled the air. In the center of the room, even more scrolls and paper were piled up on a table, and in the corner, a young man was sitting down. When he noticed Koshun, he sprung from his seat, flustered, and kneeled before him. "Are you Kakuko?" "Yes, Your Majesty." Koshun sat down in a chair. Jusetsu, meanwhile, had stood there in shock from the moment she saw Kakuko's face. "You're—" Jusetsu started, astonished. Koshun turned around, and Kakuko joined him in looking over at her as well. For a moment he looked puzzled, but he then let out a yelp of recognition. His face turned blue with such intensity that you could almost hear the blood rushing from it. It only took one look at him for her to know for certain. She could tell by his droopy eyes and friendly countenance. He might have been wearing an official's uniform now, but he was definitely the eunuch that helped Jusetsu when she was attacked the other day. "How could this be? Are you not that eunuch? How come you are here?" "Well, you see," sweat began pouring down Kakuko's face, and his lips quivered as he spoke. Then he forced his eyes shut and prostrated himself on the floor. "Please accept my sincerest, deepest apologies. What's happening?" Koshun asked, requesting an explanation from Jusetsu. But she knew no better than he did. "He was the person who helped me when those eunuchs attacked me," she told him. "Oh," he remarked, raising his eyebrows. "That means he snuck into the inner palace, then. Is that so?" Jusetsu said, looking at the pale-faced young man. Judging by his lack of excuses, it seemed like the emperor was right. "Why would you do such a foolish thing?" Mayin reprimanded him. "Who knows what would have happened if you were caught?" "That means he risked being exposed to spare me." Jusetsu walked up to Kakuko, who was crouched down on the floor, and kneeled down herself. "What was your reason for sneaking into the inner palace?" she asked. Kakuko hung his head. He seemed unsure whether or not to tell her the truth. Did it have to do with Hanojo? Kakuko looked up in surprise. "How do you—" "We heard you were her fiancé," said Koshun. You are aware of all that? Hanojo's lady-in-waiting told us." "Her lady-in-waiting." The frightened look disappeared from Kakuko's face. He sidled up to Koshun. "Where is she?" Issei promptly stepped in between the two men, preventing Kakuko from getting too close. Kakuko carried on talking. "I want to speak to her. I'm sure her lady-in-waiting would know that Shosui would never have poisoned." Kakuko got so excited that Issei had to push him away.